Hi, Christina here from Artisanthropy, here to show you how to Kitchener stitch the beginning edge with your cast off edge. And so for this section of the pattern, for the Riverdale knit along, we will need our yarn needle. Has a little bent tip, which is helpful. You don't need to have that, but it is beneficial. We have our needles, and this is where having an extra long cable is quite helpful, because I have such a long cable I don't actually need a second set of needles like the pattern calls for. I will simply pick up these stitches and put them on the needle, actually going this way, and I'll be just fine not having a second needle for that, or pair of needles. And then you need a length of the end of your yarn that is about 3 times the length of the area that you are sewing up. So I've just folded it over 3 times. I'm going to add a little bit extra just for safety's sake, and I'm going to snip that off. And I'll just move this out of the way. All right, so first we need to pick up the stitches. And so I'm just going to do that the same way that they're on the waste yarn that we used to save them on. So just directly through, not twisting them in any way or anything. You can certainly pull out the waste yarn as you go, or you can wait till the very end. I'm just going to wait till the end because I want to get through this faster. Okay, I'm nearly done picking up all these stitches. Okay, so to knit this up, we're going to have our tail end in front on the front needle, and our cast on edge on the back needle. And we're just going to start with a setup row. The setup row is done by, first you take your yarn needle and you put it through the first stitch on the front needle. This is the front needle, this is the back needle here. First stitch purlwise, and you pull it through. And make sure that you leave the working yarn under the stitch, and then you put it through the first stitch on the back needle as if to purl, and just pull it. Don't pull it too tight to begin with, but you do want to kind of bring it together. Okay, so that's just our setup row. And after you've done your setup row, you put your yarn needle through the first stitch as if knitwise, as if to knit, and pull it off the needle. Then you put it purlwise through the second stitch and leave that on the needle. Pull it through. Oops. Pull it through. And remember, don't pull it too tight just yet. And then we take our working yarn up and we put it through the first needle, the first stitch as if to knit, pull that off the back needle, put the yarn needle through the first stitch on the back needle purlwise, and pull the yarn. Remember, it always goes below. And now we do the same thing again. So take the yarn needle, put it through the first stitch as if to knit, and pull that off the needle. Then put it through the second stitch as if to purl, and pull the yarn. Okay, then take the yarn needle, put it through the first stitch on the back needle as if to knit, and pull it off the needle. Then put it through the first stitch purlwise and pull the yarn close. Okay, and you just repeat that again. So now we're doing it, we're putting the yarn needle through the first stitch on the front needle as if to knit and pulling it off the needle, then through the first stitch on the front needle purlwise and pulling the yarn through. Okay, now on the back needle, inserting the yarn needle knitwise and then pulling it off the needle. I'm already pulling it tight, I didn't mean to do that, and now put the yarn needle through the first stitch purlwise, and now you can pull the yarn tighter. I'm going to go through and pull the yarn properly closed once I'm done all of this. Yeah, so now again, put the yarn needle through the first stitch knitwise and pull it off the needle, then through the first stitch purlwise and pull the yarn close, and now knitwise, insert it knitwise on the back, on the first stitch on the back needle and pull it off, and purlwise into the first stitch now and pull the yarn tight, always making sure the working yarn is behind the needles. And I'll do that one more time. Knitwise into the first stitch on the front needle, purlwise into the first stitch, pull the yarn tight, but not too tight. And as you can see, it's starting to form the stitches, which I will close up once I'm done the rest. And then knitwise on the first, into the first stitch on the back needle, and purlwise into the first stitch on the back needle, pulling it close, pulling it tight, and again knitwise into the first stitch on the front needle, purlwise into the first stitch on the front needle, pull it tight, then knitwise into the first stitch on the back needle, pull it off, purlwise into the first stitch on the back needle and pull. I'll just do this a few more times because I know I don't always explain it the best. Yarn needle into first stitch on front needle, pull it off the needle, purlwise into the first stitch, pull the yarn together, and now again knitwise into the first stitch on the back needle, pull it off the needle, purlwise into the first stitch on the back needle, pull the yarn. Okay, and you'll see it's starting to create a very similar shape to what you see on the other side, which is great. So I'll just finish this up now and I will show you at the end. And so with the last two stitches you have left on the front and back needles, you finish off as you have been by inserting as if to knit, pull it off the needle, and then same here, insert as if to knit and pull it off the needle, pull the yarn all the way through to tighten, and that's the end there. And now you can see I've mostly pulled it about as tight as it needs to be all the way along, except in the beginning here. In the middle it's okay in most spots, and then towards the end. So now I have to go back, and because the yarn is the same color as the hat that I've knit, it's a little difficult to see where it needs to be pulled. So here I'm just showing how once you find the bumps of the area that you just grafted, you can start picking them up one by one, because you'll notice they're right next to one another, and just pull them a little tighter all the way through. And it's fairly easy to see that once you've found them. Just keep going to the one next to it and just pull it a little tighter so it kind of evens out the ridges. It might be hard to see because it is such a gray hat, but I'm just trying to kind of even out the bumps so that I'm happy, so that the seam is fairly invisible. Because that's the whole point of grafting two live edges together, is to have an invisible seam. So just getting to the end here and pulling all of these tighter. And there's the last bit. Yeah, there we go.